Hello and welcome to the Radiator Arms, the last bastion of the CRT television, and best listened to on the wireless. And today, you will notice, conspicuous by his absence, is JM. So we've had to take over temporarily while he's away on a secret mission, which we can't tell you about, and that's because then he'd have to kill us. So instead, we have a special guest today. We have Ben the Sparkle. Ben from Mile By Mile Valeting. He's been on the channel before, and if you saw a previous episode where we announced that he was going on a special trip with James in a very special car, that trip has now happened, and we're going to hope to hear a little bit about that today. So we have Ben from Mile By Mile Valeting. Say hello.
Hello.
And we have Wilder Plank.
Hello.
By the way, I'm Ant from Sports and Touring and JM and Friends. And apparently I'm Tony 210s, but maybe not for much longer because I might have a buyer for my R8. And today we are going to be talking about exactly that, supercars. What is it that people don't understand about supercars? But I think first, we need to roll the intro. Now, in a previous episode, we had a section called Ants Rants. Today, we are going to have a section called Will's Ills. Will, what's happened?
Well, nothing particular bad. I just have a funny story from the weekend. So me and my wife, we went to a wedding. We took the Mercedes, of course, because, you know, got to look sharp, got to drive sharp. And when we parked up at Tesco's about 11 o'clock at night after this to go get something to eat, there was this guy that just walked by and made me laugh. We were just getting into the car, and he rolls up and he walks by and he goes, "Nice motor, nice wheels, nice missus. She's got a nice frock. You look all right as well, mate." And then he walked off.
How odd.
How very British.
It is very British, isn't
Yeah.
it? I don't know about the nice missus bit. I don't know. It seems a bit... But anyway, each to their own.
It was 11 o'clock at night outside of Tesco. I imagine you might have
been a bit tipsy.
Exactly. You could have had people shout much worse things at you, to be honest.
This is true.
Yeah, that was just random snapshots of life and people saying things. You get that a lot in the Mercedes. It actually gets so much appreciation from people, which is mad. Like, I think even James was saying when he took it to Le Mans, because the Mercedes has been to Le Mans and back for the classic event. And that just, people go mad for it. And they really do. Like, you'll be trying to pull out of a junction or something like that. So they go, "Nice car, mate, put up at a petrol station." Every time you're at a petrol station, a conversation ensues with people. And I like it. It's great. It's cool. It's very gangster.
Yeah, when do you see another one, though?
Well, that's it.
It's such a rare car.
I saw an estate variant on the road the other day. And that is the first time I've seen one since I've been actively looking for them. I've been actively looking out for other ones since I got the car in May. We're now nearing the middle of July. And yeah, I only seen one other one, and it wasn't even a coupe. So there you go.
I saw a rare car this morning on my way here. Yeah, I drove past a crystal white Mazda RX-8 R3. It's the third one I've ever seen, and two of them are owned by me and my son.
Huh.
It was crazy. It looked all right. It looked in decent condition as well. I was really, really impressed with it as I drove past, and I was like, oh, if only I wasn't just bang on time to be here, I might have stopped and maybe left a note or something. I've actually got a fun story from Goodwood, Festival of Speed.
Okay.
Yeah, so went there with my son. We hadn't really planned to go, but last minute tickets came up via him this time, and we went there and had a great time. Lots of stuff going on. It was boiling hot, so we decided we're not going to try and film anything unless a very special car happens to show up, and then maybe we'll do a feature on that one car, but there wasn't anything like that this time. So we just did a little bit of social media content and enjoyed the day. And anyone who's watched much in the way of JM and Friends or Sports and Touring before will know that my son claims to be the least competitive person in the world. And clearly that means he is one of the most competitive people, but he will have you know he's the least competitive, and he'll fight you for it. Anyway, he can't walk past a simulator or a paddock machine without deciding to compete. So for anyone listening or watching who doesn't know what a paddock machine is, it's basically this big frame with a number of lights in a kind of cross configuration. And what happens is the lights go on, then you're supposed to hit the button with that light, and then another light comes on, you hit the button of that light. And it's designed to train racing drivers in reaction times. So, of course, he wanted to have a go. There was a leaderboard as well. That makes it worse, because once he starts, he will not want to stop unless he's at the top of that leaderboard. So they had one at McLaren. We went there, and the top score was like a 40-something in 30 seconds. So you hit 40 lights in 30 seconds. He went on there, smashed out a 50. Got a little goodie bag as a prize. He was very happy. But of course, we ended up having to walk past that specific stand several times throughout the day to make sure that no one had beat his time, beat his score. Anyway, so happens that Williams had one as well. They had two, actually. And they were just doing a leaderboard. There was no goodie bag to give away. And so he went on there. And the top score on there out of everybody else was, I think, around a 49, something like that, out of the public. There were two scores up there that were above him. One of them was from a staff member who was apparently on it every day. But everyone said that was the score he reported, but no one's seen any evidence of it. And the other one was from Alex Albon, the Formula One driver. And he had like a 73 or something, 70 something. I don't remember the number now. We'll drop the image on the screen now. So he went in there, and just before he went on, there was these people they went on, and they got like a 33. And they were very proud of themselves. And they were like, oh, we're on the leaderboard. And we're like, no, minimum on the leaderboard at the moment is 40. They were like, oh, I'm really upset. I was like, well, it's really hard. I don't think anyone could really do that realistically. So he just went on and smashed out a 60.
Oh, my word.
So he was very happy again. He said, that's made his day. He's won paddock, both the paddock machines. He's very happy. Anyway, while we're having a conversation with the lady who was there from Williams, these group of guys walked up and said, oh, I know you guys. I've been watching your channel. You got the RX-8s and the R8 and all that stuff. And they were like, oh, yeah, thanks. And he was like, started talking. One of them was a rotary fan, so he was talking technical rotary stuff for a little bit. So then we turned back, and then the lady from Williams was like, are you guys famous or something? And we're like, no. We just have a YouTube channel with a few people watching it. And although officially, and thank you very much to the JM and Friends folks, Sports and Touring is now at over 11,000 subscribers.
Hey!
We were 11 short yesterday evening. I put up a post on JM and Friends, and we had a number of people. I don't know where we are now, but it's a fair number over 11K now. But then she said, you seem to get on really well with people, and your paddock score's really good. You should be a racing driver. And he said, I've left that all in my past. And she thought he was joking, so that we had to show her that he actually was a racing driver, although that stopped 9 years ago. But that was actually a fun story and a fun experience, and do highly recommend Goodwood.
I also went Goodwood.
Oh, what day did you go?
I went on the Friday because it's the first time that I took my son.
Nice.
And I know that the Friday is less busy than the Saturday and Sunday. And it's a lot of walking because I usually go for 2 days. But yeah, we went for the 1 day. Nothing exciting happened. I didn't see either of those two machines, although to be honest, I was trying to pack the entire of Goodwood into 1 day, and it was scorchio. So yeah.
Yeah, the only time I've ever been to Goodwood was, I think it's Festival of Speed 2011. I think it was. Wow. So it was a while ago now, and yeah, it was the same thing. All I remember is it taking several hours to get in, several hours to get out, and being very hot. Although there's some nice cars there, though. Like obviously, it's got to be. It's Festival of Speed. Yeah. But yeah, those are my predominant memories: baking in the heat, and then standing next to an E28 BMW M5, which was one of my favourite cars of all time. Still is in many regards, but just seeing like a really mint one. That's a memory I've got. So I might even have a photo of that. If I've got a photo of that, we'll include it now. But that was a long time ago. Long time ago.
There are certain things that you can see there that you can't see anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Like you can stand in one spot and with only moving your head like this, see 5 McLaren F1s.
Yeah.
Like where else in the world could you do that?
Salon Privé.
Okay.
Apart from Salon Privé, yeah. But no, you're right. The hypercar presence there is very high if you're interested in hypercars. So there was Lanzante have launched their own hypercar, the 9559, and that is a 750S based car, but they have built it so that it has a central seating position with 3 seats like a McLaren F1. It looks, for me personally, a bit too much like a 750 or 720, but apparently that's what their customers wanted. Something a bit subtle, muscular but graceful at the same time, and very different. And I can understand why people who don't necessarily know about cars might look at that and say, oh, it's a 750. No, it's something different about, oh my gosh, it's got 3 seats and there's one in the middle,
Ooh.
So I can imagine that kind of reaction. And there was the MC Extrema, which is the Maserati hypercar. Also, Alpine launched their hypercar, which is a hydrogen-based, as in hydrogen fuel combustion engine, hypercar.
Is that a concept?
It's
is
a concept
okay, I was
at the moment.
Yeah.
But it looked very, very like it could be a production car.
I think an Alpine kind of hypercar could be quite interesting, couldn't it, actually?
The
Honestly.
record-holding Rimac was there as well. The 0 to 400 to 0 car was there.
Yep, the Nevada R.
Not
Yeah,
the
that's
carcass of the one Hammond crashed then.
No, yeah, same company, different car.
I know.
Yes.
You think they'd be wheeling that out as like a kind of like a cultural icon? Here's the one that Richard crashed.
I don't think there was much of it left. Didn't it burn for like 4 days or something?
Was it 4 days?
Yeah, oh, it was something stupid.
It was an
wasn't
extended
it?
period
It was a
because you
very-
can't put them out.
You can't put them
Yeah.
out because the lithium-ion batteries just catch fire and that's it. They just run away.
But yeah, and obviously we're talking about hypercars and supercars. So what else did we see? Did you see anything else interesting at Goodwood?
Oh, just you see more interesting stuff in an hour than you will see in the whole rest of the year on the road, and it's just almost overwhelming to the point where you can't like the Lancia Stratos retro, what they call the retrofit cars. Did you see those? There's like 3 or 4 of them: the white one, the gold one, and they were just like, wow, that's how you do it.
And there was the 037.
Yeah.
The Resto Mod 037s. They were
Oh,
good.
it wasn't the Stratos then, it was the 037.
Right,
I
yep,
always
yep.
got confused between the two.
That's fair enough. No, they are gorgeous. There's quite a few Resto mods there. There was also a 996 based. Which one was it? It was a 911 GTR, I think it was. It was just like a mental looking thing from Lanzante. So many different cars to see if you're interested in that sort of thing. Some people just aren't interested in hypercars.
The Koenigsegg CC850.
That's
wow.
engineering wise is very interesting. Its gearbox is fascinating.
Yeah, it's got the what is it? I can't remember the name of it now.
I can't remember the name of the
too
gearbox. Continuous shift something. I can't remember. But what's interesting about it has 9 clutches. It has the ability to do normal paddle shift or manual with a clutch pedal. So what it does is that you can either have it in automated mode, in which case you've got access to, I think something like 9 gears or something ridiculous like that, and there's like a gear per clutch, a clutch per gear pairing, and on top of that, then you can switch it into manual mode, at which point you are now mechanically controlling the clutches, I should say. And it only shifts, I think, between the 3rd gear to the 9th gear. So you get 6 gears manually. And it's just full engagement and the experience.
That's an interesting concept. They must be some of the first people doing that, because
I think so.
Yeah, Koenigsegg are making some really weird stuff. I remember what it's called. Isn't it the dark matter engine? It weighs like 15 kilos, but makes 600 or 700 brake horsepower.
3-cylinder.
No,
3 cylinders,
the
have
electric one.
Oh, the motor.
Yeah, the motor.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
yes.
the motor. I think it's called the dark matter thing, and it's just like a circle. It looks like a dish.
That will be an axial flux, which is actually quite popular now in supercars. One of the first supercar companies to go public with that was McLaren with the Artura. And it's like a pancake. The normal EV motors are radial fluxes, which are a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And it's basically the magnets are essentially above and below each other. Whereas with the axial flux, they are flat facing each other. I don't know how else to describe it in a way that makes sense on audio, but and they did that so it was compact, could fit between the engine,
And the
between the
gearbox.
crankshaft and the gearbox.
Yeah.
and that also provides reverse gear, which we talked about on a previous episode.
And steering towards the trip that Jay and I did, I was walking with my wife and my son past the Ferrari paddock in the Hypercar area a bit, and I saw a bright yellow 296 GTS and thought, I recognise that car. And when I went over to it, it obviously had a just a 296 GTS plate on it, and the guy saw me looking and taking an interest, and he came over and I said, I just did about 2,000 miles in this over the last 10 days around Europe. And he looked at me a bit funny, like, yeah, no. And I'm like, yeah, showed him the pictures. And he was like, please come through here.
There you go.
And he took me around and showed me the SF90 XX, which was amazing. And there was a customer car at the end. I've got pictures of it. I can't remember what it was called. I think it's the LaFerrari FXX or XXK. It's like 4 million quid, and he told me about this program that you can be a part of at Ferrari, where you pay like 150,000 just to get into this like little exclusive club, and you can have race car paint put on your car and have like individual like one-of-one paint specs done. And it was quite fascinating, and my son was just running around taking pictures of everything because he was behind the rope and able to like walk around the cars and take pictures of stuff. So yeah, he had a fantastic time. And the best part of the whole entire event for me, to be quite honest, isn't the bit that everyone else is at. It's the 25-minute walk up the hill to the Forest Rally stage, because you see some amazing stuff up there. Rally cars from the last 50 or 60 years. And while they were queuing up to get onto the stage, there was a Quattro S2, the one that you think of, the 1985 Group B monster with the huge wing. And it was privately owned by a German gentleman. And my son just walked clean and clear straight up to him and was just like, oh, this is my favourite car in the whole world. I play it on video games. I absolutely love it. And the guy obviously let him sit in the car and taking pictures. And it was just one of those, I think, like cemented moments in my son's mind that will truly affix him into being a petrol head.
But how old's your son?
He's 6.
See, that is a very, very kind of special age for being a car person and having it develop. Because I've had the F12, actually. Now, this is the bombshell. I had the F12 for about a week when James was away with the Mercedes in Le Mans. And we'll get on to a bit more about that later. But one of the things I did was I took my nephew Henry out in there. He's about 7 years old now, and he'd never been out in a supercar before. And let's just say he had a little smile on his face by the end of the short 15-minute ride, because he's just kind of getting into cars. And so I was like, right, this is the opportunity. Take him out in something quick and kind of cement his want to look and play with cars when he's older.
The next generation of petrol heads, I think, will be almost like few and far between, because it's very difficult to get a license. Cars are far more expensive. You can't just go out and buy a £300 car off the side of the road that's got a bit of tax and MOT left. Everything is really expensive and difficult to do with cars, and people are being pushed more and more into EVs and public transport. So the traditional petrol head is going to be a pretty rare breed in sort of like 10 to 15 years time. So I think any encouragement that we can give our sons, cousins, nephews, nieces, whatever, I think is very important, because otherwise these cars won't be getting restored and won't be getting modified or put back on the road after a few years of being in a barn or whatever, because no one will have the ability or the want to do it.
Well, it's like how there's a declining amount of interest in pre-war cars that used to have a lot of value. I think some of the values of those, if I'm right, are going down now, because the younger generation, our generation, certainly not really that interested in them.
No.
A real shame. A real shame. But we are supposed to be talking about supercars, and I think we kind of touched on it there, although there is a debate as to whether the Ferrari F12 is or is not a supercar.
It is a supercar.
Why would there be any debate about that? It's got 730 horsepower.
You could put it into the category of Grand Tourer if you want, but it's still a supercar.
Well, James disagrees.
Okay.
And we've had this conversation many times, because the first supercar, the car that literally the media invented the term around, was the Lamborghini Miura. It certainly set the scene, shall we say, for supercars. It was this rear mid-mounted engine. It basically stuck a finger up to Ferrari. Wasn't the first in the world, I don't think. I think Lotus had already done it, but Lamborghini were the first of the quote-unquote supercar companies to do it. And many people believe that is the definition of a supercar. It is the rear mid-mounted, rare, expensive, and high performance. And that other cars can be super GTs or super cars, but the supercar as a noun is reserved for the rear mid mounted. So I'd be interested to know from the listeners, if you can let us know in the comments, what's your definition of a supercar? I'm going to reserve my definition for later, but what's yours? I'm interested to know.
There's a lot of perspective change through experience been had by me over the last sort of month, and especially over the last sort of couple of years hanging out with Jay, because a lot of the misconceptions that I had about cars, like everything has to be a manual. Automatics, it doesn't matter whether it's an old J gate in a Jag or the latest DCT, it doesn't matter. That for me has just been completely corrected because it's just wrong. I had a short drive in a DBS about a year and a half ago, and even in that short drive, I was like, I wouldn't want a manual in this car. It would be wrong. And you can get them in a manual, but apparently the box isn't very good, according to Jay anyway. And lots of misconceptions about cars, like hybrids, for example. The 296 GTS is a hybrid, and people hated the fact that it's a hybrid, and also that it's lost the V8 and it's gone to a V6. Don't worry, the 2 people in the world can afford one of those. It is fantastic. You don't notice the V6. All you notice is that it's just got an incredible amount of shove. And you don't notice the hybrid system until you want to leave your hotel to go and do some filming at 7 in the morning and don't want to wake everyone else up who was up late last night. So you just press the hybrid button, and until you get to 80 mile an hour, you just silently waft out of your hotel. And at that point, I think that works. That's a utility that actually has a benefit. And so much stuff, hopefully it will come back to me during this podcast, has just been changed for me with regards to, oh no, you don't want one of them, or oh, that's rubbish. Completely changed when you actually have experience, because a lot of people, for example, in the comments section will say, oh, these are rubbish, so no, I wouldn't have one of those. And it's like, well, yeah, because you don't have one of those and you don't know that it's actually really good. That's why you're saying it's rubbish.
I think it's important, if I can, to while you're on this, to talk about gearboxes actually. There was obviously a time where older automatic gearboxes, people preferred manuals over because they were very slushy, they were very imprecise with their shifts, and they didn't do what you wanted. Take the Mercedes, for instance. That's got a gearbox which is essentially 40-odd-year-old technology, a four-speed with an overdrive, and you do have to drive that differently because it just goes, all right, then here's some disappointment coming out the back of me. But it's comfortable. It suits the car because it's comfortable, and I would not have that car with a manual because it's part of its character. But the gearbox in the F12, it's so smooth and it's so lightning quick, and I think that is definitely part of the GT side of things, because you don't really have to think about that gearbox. You can just drive it how you want, and you can enjoy the car and enjoy the power. It isn't as engaging as perhaps as a manual would be in there, but it's still a very good gearbox. However, have you driven the Scuderia, the 430 Scuderia?
Yeah.
The gearbox in that is phenomenal.
There are different... In my mind, I had every automatic gearbox is the same and is absolute just rubbish. That opinion is rubbish.
The gearbox in the Scud is so engaging. You have to think so much about it. It's almost like a manual, except it's so fast, and the way it kind of smacks you with the shifts, and if you get that perfect downshift on it with the rev matching, which you do. I actually would not have that car with a manual gearbox. If I was ever in a position to own one, I'd have it with that F1 box because it is phenomenally fun.
It is probably one of the best automated manual gearboxes.
Yeah, single clutch robotized.
Yeah, one of the best out there. I would say that I think the Gallardo Superleggera is up there with it.
Yours is definitely,
and it's an even more violent shifts
Yeah.
when in Corsa mode, or the equivalent of race
it feels
mode
like the
on a
engine's
Ferrari.
trying to come through the firewall at you.
It's like the engine mounts are broken.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. To go back to your point about the Scuderia gearbox, when we picked up the 296 for the trip, so this is actually the intro into when we took the 296 to Europe, we picked the car up from the Ferrari Challenge at Brands Hatch on the Sunday. So we drove in the Scuderia, and the nice lady came over and said, would you like to do a lap of the track, the parade lap, as it were. And so we did that.
Was that in the Scud?
In the Scuderia.
Okay.
And once I'd finished doing that, which was amazing, by the way, there was about 80, 90 other Ferraris on track, all doing only about 30 mile an hour, but it was just quite a procession. But once we'd finished, we were sort of like centre pack, on the start, finish straight at Brands. And these 3 Ferrari techs came over and sort of like mobbed the 430 and were cooing about the gear change. Oh, shotgun gear change. Oh, this was the best thing that Ferrari ever made. They can make faster and whatever, but this is the one. Like this is the car, best thing they ever made. And that was Ferrari techs saying that. So they've got access to everything. They've driven everything. They've worked on everything. They know everything.
Yeah,
They loved it.
That Scuderia is so special. I mean, the F12 is great, and I'll talk about it more later. I love that car. I had such a good time in it. But the Scuderia, that just gives you such a feeling when you drive the car. And I've only driven that car for about an hour. I never even fully got out of it what it's capable of. But when James took me out there and he said, take it all the way up over 5k and do that shift up into the next gear. It's mind warping how fun that feels. And I got out of that car instantly going, I can see why you have 3 of these.
Yeah, I had the same experience as you. And up until that point, I'd only driven, I think I'd driven maybe the 550 at that point. I'm not quite sure. Again, only for a short time. And I'd never driven anything that fast car-wise on the road. I've ridden motorbikes for 15 years. That car, when I took it out that night, I'll just never forget it. It was just amazing. We came off the roundabout, dual carriageway, foot down. My Lord. Just unbelievable. The gear changes in it were just savage.
Gets up to 70 very quickly.
It does get up to 70 very fast.
What's your favourite Ant out of the 3?
Oh, what, the out of James's Ferrari?
Yes.
The 550, the F12.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could. It's like,
You're going to say
which is your favourite kid?
Yeah.
They're all different and you like them in different ways and not necessarily more or less than the other.
Come on.
Now, in my case, I have a favourite child, and that's because I've only got one.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware.
Same here.
I've got none.
And the car that I enjoy the most, I think, is the Scud, but that's just because I'm much more about that lower down, sporty handling. Although I think the F12 does defy logic and reason and physics.
Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of what it can do for its size and how it feels.
The grip as well. The way that car can just grip and you can fire out of corners, and it actually gives you a lot more confidence. You can put power on earlier than you think, and as long as you're leaving it in just a kind of standard kind of sport mode or whatever, so and you're not, as I said, defying the laws of physics and looking to have a crash, that thing can seriously move itself around for a car that is as wide as it is.
And it's perfectly balanced. It's just the way it rotates in the corners. When you go in a little bit harder and you feel the car rotating around and getting just a little bit of a slide, it just does it perfectly right around your hip, and this is a quality that I look for in a car. The Scuderia obviously is a different thing. You're slightly more forward and you just feel like this engine is just propelling you down the road by pushing against your back. It's a different thing. But no, I drove the Lamborghini here today not because I'm dailying it, just because I had an issue the other day and it's gone away and I want to see if it's going to come back. So I'm just driving it a little bit more just to see if the issue does reoccur or if it was just an anomaly for one day.
What's the 550 like? I haven't driven the 550 yet, actually.
I was going to weigh in on that, actually, as part of the manual versus automatic thing.
Go for it.
When I had it for a month back last year, and Jay was like, have fun. I was like, oh my God, it's a manual 550. This is amazing. Not a mid-90s automatic gearbox, but that car could... Don't get in the comments section. I know. When you're actually driving it to drive it, it's... It could do with... I can't even say it out loud. It could do with an auto, because it's that kind of... It's like an F12. It's the predecessor to the predecessor of the F12. So it's a big GT with the V12 up front, and... Yes, it's fun to drive in short bursts with a manual, but when you're doing a trip in it, or especially if you're having to go like in and out of villages and round towns and stuff, it's just like,
Is it a heavy clutch?
Yes, it's agricultural. Like people,
That's a great way of describing it. I always feel like I've done a leg day having come away from that.
I feel like I'm working like a Victorian signal box where you have to unlock the lever with your foot first. You know, it's just honestly, people, get in the comment section. I've got small legs, right? Okay, but
Oh, wow, you do, don't you?
yeah,
I never noticed that before.
I weigh 56 kilograms, so
His leg weighs more than that.
My excess flab weighs more than that.
The 550 is a great drive. The gearbox is one of the best of all time. And if you're going out for like a half hour, 40-minute blast around some country lanes and stuff, it's fantastic. But after a while, especially if you get in traffic with it, you don't want it.
I think it's fine on a long run. Actually, I've had the 550 for an extended period previously, and as long as you're kind of getting onto the motorway soon, cruising, and then you have a little blast through some country lanes and you're not stop-start traffic, then it's fine. But once you're in stop-start traffic, you can feel like it's a bit of a leg day. Even the throttle, the cable on that, it is heavy.
It's the same on the Merc.
Everything's heavy.
No, it's not. I've driven both. I'm telling you now, it's not the same.
Oh, crikey. Well, I came away from driving the Merc for the first time, and I actually had a little bit, I could feel like I'd done a workout on the muscles on my leg. It's one of the reasons I've actually started going to the gym to us. So I realised how weak I was if an old cable throttle was making my leg hurt.
Can you imagine trying to drive the F12 at a pace with a manual gearbox? Do you think you would actually be good enough to get the performance out of the car over the I assume is a DCT in it?
No,
you can't. I mean, this is one of the reasons why supercars these days now have DCTs, and the reason why they have the automated manuals. Previously, obviously DCTs weren't developed to the point where they are now. They're relatively young technology in the grand scheme of things. Not entirely. Dual clutches have been around for many, many years. The old London buses used to have a dual clutch where they pre-selected the next gear. Don't know if you knew that.
No,
I did not.
Yep. The old London buses, they were manual to an extent, but you'd move the gear lever into the next position, and then it's when you took your foot off the throttle and put it back on again, it would roll into the next gear. So it had two clutches on it, but it wasn't designed for performance. It was designed to haul a giant machine down the road full of 100 odd people. But the technology has existed for quite some time, but no one had really thought about how to apply that in cars. And we had the automated manuals because at the time there wasn't an automatic gearbox, a traditional torque converter automatic gearbox that could handle the kind of power that supercars were developing. Only manual boxes could. So the first automated robotized manuals came about because they wanted the sturdiness of the gearboxes that could handle the power and the torque, but the speed of a machine changing the gears on your behalf. And of course, they were going for performance, not for comfort, whereas a traditional automatic gearbox is all about comfort. Now you've got the ZF gearboxes that can handle quite a lot and so on and so forth, but ultimately it's still a different type of technology.
And
I was going to say, I actually made a whole video talking about the automated manual gearboxes and how I think most people don't understand them. And I think they got such a bad name in the early days because people were told it's an automatic. Like you were saying earlier, it's an automatic. So when people got into it, their expectation was, it's going to be a nice, smooth experience when I'm in traffic. And it just isn't.
No, you don't want to drive anything with a single, like the M5, for example. I will still maintain, though, that some cars do require a manual, like any hot hatch. I think even if you've got a Golf R, the fact that they don't even offer a manual anymore is just bad. That takes away the interaction with the car. Because when you do a track day or even just some fast road driving, you want to be involved with the car. You know, if you want just this in a hot hatch, I don't know, it doesn't feel great. I don't know if you've driven anything like a Golf R or anything.
I've driven DSG stuff before. We had an early TT 3.2 Quattro, so that was one of the ones. I'm pretty sure one of the first.
That was a first gen DSG, wasn't it?
It was the first gen DSG, and it was fine. Like, it was all right. I just remember it being a bit jerky, but usable, and it was okay. I probably would have preferred a manual in that one at the time, but as I said, the same kind of system or the gearbox and the scud, going back to that. My goodness.
I think that it's sort of, you have to match the gearbox with the power.
Yes.
Like I was saying, the 550, though it's a 30-year-old car, has still got 500 brake horsepower. So it doesn't matter how quickly it rips its way through the rev range and pushes you down the road. If you take like a second or two to shift gear, you're just negating all of its progress. Like if you were driving, for example, the 296 GTS, that thing needs gears every second. You're going through second, third, and fourth in a blink. And if you're taking longer to shift than it takes to ask for another gear, you're just taking away all this. So it needs a DSG. But if you're in a hot hatch that's only got 1, 2, 3, even 400 brake horsepower, you don't need a DSG.
I was going to say, but in the 550 though, in cars that surely part of the fun factor is having that manual gearbox.
It is, like I said, if you're on a back road and you're just going out to your local spot that you like to go to on a Sunday afternoon, and you're just, bimbling through the, countryside, or you're just making some progress and you're shifting gears, fine. But I think that if you were to use it almost like daily, I think it would be, especially with the clutch, I think it would just be too much.
Either that, or you'd get much stronger legs as a result.
One stronger leg.
Exactly. And I think it's not just about power, and it's not just about progress. I think it's about, the overall experience of the car. And I think for me, there is something about that sort of flappy paddle thing, especially as someone who's an F1 fan, has watched the racing. That was part of what, Ferrari used for the marketing around their F1 box, that it's part of that race car-like experience. And with the single clutch, one of the things I was going to mention about in my video, which I won't tell you all about if you want, in case you want to go and watch it, but one of the key points I made was I've had the privilege of having driven a race car with a full sequential box on it. Ooh. And it is very, very rough. When you're pulling away, you clunk it into gear, and then you're pulling away and it goes just, and it's like kind of rocks backward and forward as you're trying to get going. If you're trying to drive slowly, it's absolutely awful changing gears from first to second when you're just kind of bimbling around, getting yourself into position on the track or in the pit lane. But then once you're going, it's an absolute delight. And I think the automated manual box gives you something closer to that experience. It's like the halfway house between your modern dual clutch transmission and a good old fashioned, sequential gearbox where you can smash through the gears and it just smacks you in the back every time. So I think that that's part of why people didn't understand those gearboxes. And that's one of the first things I think the gearboxes is something that a lot of people don't understand about supercars. They're not trying to be a comfortable, gentle ride. They're not trying to be that city car that is just so easy to use in and around town. It's a supercar. It's meant to be the closest thing that you can get on the road to a race car experience. And I think that's something that is lost on a lot of things. The DCTs on the R8, for example, I think have lost something. They're a bit too smooth, a bit too gentle. The modern Ferrari DCTs, however, they actually are set up on their supercars in race mode to give you a kick. It's not as violent a kick as on the Scud or on something like the Superleggera, but it is still a kick. I drove the Speziale, 458 Speziale recently, and in race mode, smash through the gears, and it has enough of a kick to maintain that sense of I'm driving something that's practically a race car.
Does the F12 do that in race mode?
No.
Okay, that was going to say, because I didn't know. I had it in wet and like sport. That's all I had it in because, that's what I was told to do. I did what I was told. So I assume the gearbox is just the same through there. It's quick. It's just the only way to describe it is smooth. I did feel perhaps it lost some of the excitement through the gearbox because it's not as obviously violent like the Scud, but it was just a really good box you didn't have to think about. And when you're going warp speed and you put your foot down, you're staring into a corner, you're going, oh my God, it's nice to not have to think about it, I suppose is one way to describe it.
Yeah, and this is why I would stand with James on this more, that it's more of a super GT than a supercar as a single word now.
Yeah, I guess so, but it's certainly got supercar power and supercar wow factor when you put your foot down. Because the thing is, I've taken a couple of people out on that as well. We've got a video coming up on the JM and Friends channel where I take my mother out in the F12 and I scare her witless, basically. You've seen like the first cut of the video, and I think you found it quite amusing.
It is very funny.
And so, yeah, from a power perspective, it certainly is there. I took my friend Jordan out in it as well, and he couldn't believe it. He was basically pinned back in the seat, calling me a madman. And this is all within legal speeds, by the way. All legal, but it's just how quickly that power comes on and how brutal it is.
He's laughing.
No, I promise you. I absolutely promise you.
It's like the thing where you see on a road in Mexico, just underneath an Instagram post, and it's like, that doesn't save you.
No.
That saves you from nothing.
No. I promise that up to 60, you can control it, but that up to 60 is, yeah.
Yeah, we are quite particular about that on this channel, that we don't ever want to show any like speeding or anything dangerous. No. Spirited driving, yes. And you can achieve that if you're on a country road and you can see that there's absolutely no one behind you. You can slow down enough to be able to, get it into second gear and give it a pull. Sometimes enough for first gear, because obviously first gear is quite tall on all of these cars. It can carry quite a lot of speed. So you can still slow it down to about 30 miles an hour, drop it into first, and absolutely slam it into second gear, and then you're done.
That's a fantastic segue into talking about part of the trip and part of the entire reason for this podcast.
Well, it wasn't the entire
not
reason.
The entire reason. It was to
more
talk about supercars and experience and stuff like that. Yeah. Just cycling back very quickly. I'm not talking from a point of ignorance, by the way, with the 550. I realise that my comments about the 550 shouldn't be a manual are probably going to get some backlash, but
good.
More
engagement. We like that.
Yeah, give it. I drove a 575, which is the facelifted 550, but it had the first generation F1 box, and I drove that literally back to back with the 550. And the owner of the 575 let me drive that, and he drove the 550, and we bimbled off into the countryside. Within 10 minutes, I was like, this is the gearbox this car needed. I'm really sorry, but it does. I was told and brainwashed, like everyone was back in the early to mid-2000s by Jeremy Clarkson, that all of the flappy paddle, oh, look, click, oh, now it's going to give me a gear, and complaining about how long it took and whatever. This was one of those cars. It was like a 2001 car. And it was fine. It was fine. It was great if you just left it to do its own thing. It was fine. And when you get a move on, you want to change gear yourself. It's not as engaging. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying that I don't want a manual 550 because it's not engaging. It is, but it's a GT car. You're doing distance in it. You don't buy a 550 Maranello because you want to go back road blasting in it. Like, I've had hot hatches my whole life, and the whole point that you were saying about you can have fun up to 60 mile an hour, you absolutely can, because when the road's doing this and you're having to brake all the time, you don't need to brake 60 mile an hour. You just maintain speed through the corners, and that's your fun. But like the M5, for example, that M5 review that he did, the infamous one with the E60, the V10, it did look rubbish, and it does have a bit of a reputation for being very unreliable, etc. So maybe that could have done with waiting a little while until there was a better gearbox available, because I think that's the only thing that really hamstringed that car, because everyone loves it. Anyway, sorry, to go back to the 296. You were saying, you can, make sure things are clear and safe, and you drop it into first or second and put your foot down. Putting your foot down in first gear in a car with 830 horsepower?
Not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea. Putting your foot down in second gear. Now, when I first started driving it, I was quite honestly petrified. I'd gone from 2 years ago, before I met James, not driving anything faster than a 300 brake hot hatch. And all of a sudden, over the last year, I think I've driven 6 or 7 different supercars. Everything from a 430 Scuderia. I drove the F12 yesterday for the first time. That car has eluded me for a year and a half.
It was the first time you drove it, was it?
First time I drove it. We only did just a short, 20, 25 minute loop. But it just reinforced what I'm about to go into with the 296. I think the manufacturers over the years, the 355 made 400 brake horsepower or whatever it was. The 360 made a little bit more than that. And then, the 430 made 500 brake horsepower, et cetera, et cetera. There has to be a point of diminishing returns. And when my video does come out on the 296 GTS when I'm driving it around Switzerland, which was just, I'll never forget that.
There were some epic moments.
Oh, it was.
I've seen a lot of the photos and some of the clips.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I don't want to give too much of much away, but the driving experience in that car for the first couple of days was basically just driving it through northern France, just in a straight line. We were doing just hundreds and hundreds of miles. And then when we eventually did start driving it properly, I was like, oh, you can't put your foot down in second gear, because you see all these videos and it's not just Mustangs, it's everyone, Mercedes, BMWs leaving meets, they put their foot down and it goes left, right, and they throw it into the crowd or a lamppost or a bush, and I just thought, I've got twice the power of these cars that you see coming out of car shows right underneath my right foot. And go for it.
Here's the problem a lot of these people are doing, though.
Yeah.
They are turning all the stability control and traction off, and they are not feeding the power in. I'm sure, as James drilled into your head as well, feed the power in. You can't just yam on the throttle, because you will cause yourself problems.
The other problem many of them have is when the car does start to step out, they snap off the throttle, when in fact you
which
should
loads
balance.
up the front.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the rear goes light, and then they end up in a bush or a crowd.
Exactly.
But after a couple of days, especially with the filming aspect of it, because we were on the Siston Pass, and I dropped James off, typical stuff, up and down. So I'm doing the same corners. I know what's there, what's not, the layout of the road. So you start thinking, well, I came into this corner in fourth last time. Maybe I can come into it in third. Maybe I can brake a little bit later. Maybe I can get on the throttle a little bit earlier. And then I started to realize I'm going nearly like full foot down out of this corner in third gear, and it's not doing anything, because the traction control in that Ferrari, again, not all traction control is created equal. No. Some is terrible, especially the earlier stuff from like 20 years ago is terrible. It's more of a hindrance than a help. But this doesn't react to too much power causing you a problem. It won't allow you to get the power to create yourself a problem, because you put your foot down and it measures obviously 1,000 parameters 1,000,000 times a second, like what way is the wheel turned, how much load is on this part of the car. So when you put your foot hard down in third gear out of a corner, it doesn't just feed all the power in and then start reining it back when things go wrong. It just goes, well, he can't have that because it's going to cause a problem. And I left it in sport mode as well. I went into race mode once just so I could feel the, in a straight line, just so I could feel the gear changes. But after a few days in that car, I covered, we did 2,600 miles, and Jay reckons that he didn't even do 500 of them. So I did over 2,100 miles in that 2006 in 9 days. But it was a 10-day trip. But one day we parked it up and we used public transport around Munich, which was, I love Munich. I love Germany. It's a great country.
Yeah, I heard that that you now hold the land speed record for the JM and Friends channel.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Yep.
Might be a couple of miles an hour over what James and I have done.
Yep.
71 miles an hour, 72?
No, the
this
Autobahn.
was on
This
was on the Autobahn, and it wasn't just in Mexico or Autobahn. It genuinely was on the Autobahn, but it was a speed that I am glad I did, and will never do again.
But so this is one of the things that I think a lot of people really don't understand about these cars, because they see people getting themselves into trouble, and it is for the reason that you say, Will, that people switch off the traction control because they think, oh yeah, you're not a real man unless you switch off the traction control, which is, well, you might not be a real caveman, but yeah, whatever floats your boat in that regard. But these cars have been designed by engineers to allow us to feel like driving heroes, driving gods.
Yeah.
And the modern traction control systems, especially on the Ferraris, in my opinion, is like among the best. Having driven a few different cars, one of the worst was actually the rear-wheel drive R8 GT. That was one of the worst.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was one of the ones that actually lets you to start to get into a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And then kind of reins things in, but just a tiny little bit too quickly.
That car was quite honestly terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, not just because of what it was and who it belonged to and all this, that, and the other. It was just a terrifying car because it felt very analog. It felt old. It felt,
in a good way.
In a good way, but in the way that you had to respect old analog cars, except old analog cars didn't come with 630 brake horsepower. 630 brake horsepower was 20 years ago the echelon of an Enzo or McLaren F1 30 years ago.
Hypercar. That was hypercar performance.
Hypercar performance, because 1,000 brake horsepower cars, there was one car. It was a Veyron. That's it. Okay, and the Callaway Sledgehammer in whenever it was. But they didn't exist. Nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, I put a tune on my GATM3 and now it's got 970 horsepower. You know, it's not a massive number anymore. But back in the sort of early to mid 2000s, if you wanted 600 plus brake horsepower, you went and bought, you know, an Enzo or something like that. But that R8, because that was one of the, I loved the dashboard on it.
Oh, it's one of the best.
It's the best
Ergonomically.
Yeah, ergonomically and everything is just amazing because you can have the map on the left, what you're doing with the car in the middle, and then like your music on the right hand side. Sorry, that's a really big aside, but it was. And also the HVAC controls.
Yep, all physical tactile
Within
stuff.
Reach. But they had little OLED screens in the middle of the dials, so that you didn't have to look away. If you know what I mean, as you're twisting it, it's adjusting what you're doing and telling you in real time what you're doing with it. It's amazing. It was a mix of old, people want to touch stuff and actually twist knobs and see what you're doing with modern things like a little screen. They don't want the 296 GTS. They've actually gone back now with the latest. What was it? The latest Ferrari that's just come out now. The one they unveiled 2 weeks ago. It's the Roma replacement.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it.
I can't remember the name of it either. They've gone back to physical switches. Who knew? Because the 296 was literally a two-man job while you're driving. Because if we needed to adjust something, or if my phone rang and I got off the phone call, it would take the map away. So to get the map back, Jay was like, oh yeah, we'll just sort of do that up and down and swiping, but you didn't know if you needed to press or swipe, and you couldn't feel anything because it's just a piece of glass or plastic on the steering wheel, and you're sort of looking at this, doing this with your finger. And it's like, how is this better? How have we gone backwards in such a horrible way?
It looks more technological, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but ultimately, it sucks. Honestly, I totally agree with you. I love the little LED screens inside in the fascia of the dial. It's really, really nice. Actually, you know what? One of my this is going to sound really bad, but on the Ford Mach-E, right, this big screen. It's actually got a physical dial for the volume control on the screen.
What?
Yep. Yeah. It's right at the base of the screen. There's a physical dial that's on the screen, and a part of the screen shows through the middle of it, and that's where you touch it for powering on or off the screen. And you'd think that it's like a total waste of time, but actually, it just makes complete sense. There's no sort of like sliding things. And one of the issues with screens as well is if you're driving along, especially in a supercar, it's a bit more bumpy. You want to try and get your finger on that target on the screen, and your hands bouncing up and down, and your fingers bouncing up and down, and then you end up missing it and pressing the wrong button. It's a bit of a pain.
Do you know what I do in my mum's Sandero when I borrow that car and use it occasionally? It's got CarPlay on it, but because the way the screen is kind of like out front and it comes up, it's not like recessed into the dashboard. It's just there as a tablet that's been shoved on the dash because it's a cheap car. One of the things I find myself doing is put my hand on the top of the actual screen itself, and then moving my hand along it and using my thumb to press things, just so I can make sure that I'm kind of keeping my eye and keeping on the road, and I do it accurately. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I think it's just one of the things that I think, you know, Volkswagen were kind of quite big with it at first, with the whole capacitive.
And they weren't
buttons.
even backlit.
No, and yeah,
the HVAC controls and the Volkswagen stuff wasn't even backlit on a lot of them. Like, I think the Mark 8 Golf and stuff, I think like the ones to adjust the temperature and possibly even the volume and stuff on the radio.
Remember.
So what do you do at night?
You just go yourself, basically.
My dad's Sierra from the 80s had backlit HVAC controls. Just saying, Volkswagen.
I think they had them as well, but they
decided to not do it anymore.
I haven't seen it myself. I'm going to go on what Will says. But getting back to the overall supercar experience, I think where we were at was talking a little bit about the experience of these traction control systems, which do generally work quite well to keep you out of trouble. Even in race mode in the 296, if you are on a nice warm tyres on a dry day, nice and warm, you can feed that power on much faster than you think you should be able to.
Yeah.
And even though the car squirms up and down the road a little bit, it still keeps you in check. It still keeps you under control.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things. And one of the key aspects of that, I think, is to not panic. And in order to not panic, I think you just have to build yourself up to it progressively. James did a pretty cool video on the JM on Cars main channel where he talked about some tips on how to get going with your first supercar experience.
Yeah.
What things to look for, what to check, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, well, it's a supercar. They might look at the tyres, they look all right, but then not realise that the tyres are like 8 years old, because people don't drive their supercars. So it's still got 7 millimetres of tread on the tyre, but it's basically a hockey puck and has virtually no grip. Or checking the wear on the inside of the tyres, because it tends to have a lot more camber, negative camber on as standard on a supercar. So it's the inside that will often wear. But he also talks about how do you build yourself up to that point. Like, don't just get in there and think I'm just an amazing driver, because most people, and I'll say this to you because I've been through this myself, especially having spent a lot of time with a certain racing driver and seeing what he can do, most people think they're far better drivers than they are, mainly because they've never seen anyone who can drive at such a high level beyond what they do.
Yeah.
And they think they can get into these cars and control them. But what happens is it does way more than you first expect. And then people panic, and then they snap off the throttle, and that's what causes the big collisions to happen.
Yeah, you see, I got into the F12 knowing that I'm absolute scum and talentless, you see. So I made sure to build myself up. I am lucky because I've had experience before in cars, I've said previously, that are rear-wheel drive with welded diffs and things like that. So I get an idea of when it kind of like snaps out to feather off the throttle, leave it off, like not snap it off, and my instant reaction is to steer into it, kind of thing. I do the best I can for the experience I have. But the thing was about the traction control on the F12 is it actually, I think it's really hard for you to upset that car. You can almost be a bit more ham-fisted in standard than you'd probably expect.
That's exactly.
Than you think.
Yes, exactly.
I don't say than you think, because actually, so there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
I was about to mention that.
And more often than not, the people that think they're the best are actually nowhere near as good as they think they are. And the people that think that they're the worst tend to be actually a lot better than they think they are. And that's usually because of where you're measuring yourself. Like the average person thinks, I'm a great driver, I'm practically a Lewis Hamilton of the world, and those people have never been in a car with a racing driver, let alone Lewis Hamilton. They've never experienced what it's like to literally have a car on the edge of grip. Like most people think they know, but until you've been in a car with a racing driver, you don't know what that's like. It's just a very weird sensation that I hadn't even properly experienced until I went out with a racing driver. And those folks are measuring themselves against their other mates who have all learned to drive in exactly the same way on a road. Maybe they've done a couple of track days. But I think when you've been around people who are really good drivers, JM, absolutely brilliant driver.
I experienced that on the Route de Napoleon.
Yeah.
He, in one of the rare instances that he was driving, he just decided to show me a bit of what the 296 could do, and I nearly broke off the damn door handle. It was all very safe, it was all very within the law, but it was also very quick, and speeds through corners, that sort of stuff that I was talking about earlier. And there's one thing that we haven't been talking about. We talk about power, gearboxes, traction control, tyres. There's one thing, especially the F12 highlighted to me, but the 296 was also very much like it as well: steering.
Oh, my
Supercar steering. If you've driven a Ford Focus your entire life, or even if you've had a BMW, which has got good steering by nature,
even a Porsche,
there's nothing. If you do this at 20 mile an hour in a Focus, you barely get any movement from the car.
Now remember, some people are listening, so you might need to describe what you're doing.
I'm holding a steering wheel and turning it slightly with my hand motions. And I got in the F12 yesterday, pulled off of James's driveway, and as we were going round the first corner, it was almost like I'd done a full 90 degree on the steering wheel, and I'd barely even pushed it a couple of millimeters. The steering input is immediate, precise, and just...
The F12 especially has a particularly fast steering rack on it.
Good God.
I think it's only 2 turns lock to lock as well, or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't get to test that, but I'll take your word for it, as you had it for a week.
Yeah.
No, it is very fast. And I think that is a thing that a lot of people don't appreciate. What I find when I get into the F12, I have to kind of recalibrate because it is that much faster. because you put in just slightly too much input into the steering wheel at first. I had a similar experience to that, and the only thing that I've experienced that I would say the steering is even faster and more responsive is a Caterham and an aerial atom, but mostly a Caterham. By the way, I'm wearing a Caterham t-shirt today.
Hey.
Oh,
And the reason for that is because when we were talking about British cars, we forgot to mention Caterham and Morgan. So very, very sorry to the people listening to that who didn't hear us talk about Caterham and Morgan. So thought I'd wear my Caterham 50th anniversary t-shirt that they gave me last year. Anyway, the Caterham, when I first got into one, I was going... So Bob Lachley, who's the CEO, is a friend of mine, and I know him through Nissan and years at Nissan, that he was there looking after the sports cars, and my channel started out with a 370Z, and we met that way many years ago and became friends. And he said, "Oh, do you want to fancy going on a bit of a road trip? I've got to go and get my old 370Z Nismo company car that the family had bought off of Nissan when he retired, and bring it back because it's had some work done on it up north." I went, "All right, what are we going in?" And he went, "Oh, well, I thought we'd take the Caterham." And I went, "Which one?" He said, "Oh, I've got the 170S for the week, so we'll take that." I was like, "Do you know what? This sounds like a bit of an adventure." He says, "Yeah, he said, I daily Caterhams, it's fine. We'll be fine." So we both squeezed into this Caterham. It was the Series 3 chassis, so it's the small chassis. And we ended up going on this long motorway road trip up to somewhere up north, somewhere. I can't remember where it is. Yorkshire somewhere. Anyway, I first got into the car at service station, started doing the second leg of this drive, and we got onto the motorway, and I felt like just turning the steering wheel by even 1 degree had so much input. When I got onto the motorway, I was actually unable to keep the car entirely straight in the lane, because I was just trying to put in these tiny inputs. I was trying to keep it really small, but even that wasn't small enough.
Jeez.
So in the end, he said, you just got to forget about it and just look where you're going, and it will happen. And then literally about a minute later, car's going perfectly straight. When I got out of that and then got back into my 370Z when we got back from the road trip, I felt like I was driving a bus.
Imagine getting straight in from the F12 into the Golf. That is something that is comfort and numb is the way to describe that. And I tell you what, it's one of the things with the steering though, is you're amazed how quickly you get used to it actually.
Yep.
And that's not to talk it down, because it's brilliant steering. But one of the things James was saying to me is keep the touch light. Don't death grip it, and be very careful. Try not to shuffle. Actually, try and hold the wheel. And make sure you push the wheel rather than pulling it. Little things like that, to kind of where you get more control of it. And actually, you find you won't upset the car. Because when I was first driving it, I was kind of upsetting the car a little bit through bends and stuff, because I was perhaps moving it more than I should. But after the second day, I was getting used to it, and it was feeling really natural.
And that is one of the great things, I think, particularly with the F12. And even James says this, you don't drive it for a while, you get into it, and it's like, oh, I feel like I'm having to learn this car all over again. And it's got so much to give that you feel like you've got so much to learn. You can drive it for a week and still come away from it feeling like, I still haven't got anywhere near what this car can do. And it's almost like an infinite amount of learning opportunities, which I personally find one of the most stimulating things about any car.
Oh, I will never be able to master that car. Never be able to master it. I will be able to get it around safely. I'll be able to enjoy the power legally, but I will never be able to do the things that, even James can do. Or, I saw a video of Chris Harris driving the F12 the other day. My goodness, the way he could make that car dance and move. You just think, if you were that good, the amount of enjoyment you can get out of that would be insane. I'm already having a great time enjoying that car at my mediocre skill set. What proper racing drivers could do.
Was that the Anglesey video?
I think it was, yeah. So the one.
Yeah.
And also, another thing worth talking about these cars, the brakes. And I think we've all said this before, is the mark of a good set of brakes when you don't have to think about them, when you just put your foot on and you know that they're going to work and they're just there and you're just connected to them, and they're like an extension of you. That's kind of how I see the F12 in its steering and in its controls and everything. It feels almost telepathic. You know, once you get used to it and once you get into the zone, you're not holding your steering wheel, you're not putting your foot on the accelerator, you're not putting your foot on the brake, you are controlling it with your mind. That's how it feels.
I was literally about to say, you're controlling also with telepathy, because if you don't have to think about the steering, don't have to think about what your hand is doing, and don't have to think what your feet are doing, that's the mark of a good car. Because you are literally locked in to driving that car, and you're not having to think, I've got to remember, that's like that. If you're just doing it and just in the flow with that car, you know, great car.
Ferrari F12, it's more like F16 if you ask me.
F22 Rhapsody.
This brings us back around very nicely to the whole point of like diminishing returns that I was getting into a little while ago, which is, again, if you're not Chris Harris on a racetrack, can you actually get all of an F12? No. So this
none of the supercars. I mean, I was out in a 720S not that long ago. We put a video out about that as well on JM and Friends, and they're just bonkers. Like, you can't use it all because it's just got too much to give.
Yeah, people always say to you, what's the point of a supercar if you can only go 70 miles an hour?
That is a great question.
Yeah, you can only go 70 miles an hour legally, but it's everything up until 70 miles an hour. That is so different. That is so insane. And that just feels so good compared to your Volkswagen Polo. That is why you buy a supercar and drive it on the road.
Now, this is one of the things that I wanted to get to in this topic, and that is these misconceptions that people have, like, what's the point? You can't do more than 70 miles an hour. Well, maybe you can't because you've never actually been somewhere to do that. But there are loads of places in the UK that you can take your car and drive over 70 miles an hour, and they are racetracks. They're all over the country. You pay sometimes a relatively modest amount of money to be able to go on the track, drive the car as fast as you can possibly go on a racetrack, and then you can drive the car home again. So there are places that you can do it. There are runways where they are rented out. Yep, like the VMAX events where the runway's rented out. They run a whole event. There's lots of safety controls and marshals and all of those other things going on. But it is a mile-long runway where you can actually put your foot down and see if you can get to 200 plus miles an hour. And in a mile, in a supercar, you can. So there are lots of places where you can do it. And if you have a supercar, you're not generally using it as a utility to get from point A to point B. And the only time you are using it as a utility to get from point A to point B tends to be to go to either special events or have a special driving experience, or take it to a racetrack or a VMAX event where you actually do get to push the car to your limits, very rarely anywhere near its limits, but certainly to your limits. And there's great opportunities to do it. But even like you say, in the meantime, on a country lane, you know, you floor it, you get up to 60 miles an hour, and then there are corners where the average car would have to hit the brakes, slow right down to about 45 before it goes around the bend, and you just fly through that corner at 60. And that is the point, because your average speed you can maintain in a supercar is way higher than your average car.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a track day about 10 or 12 years ago over at Bedford, which is a great track. And there was a guy there, and I can't remember what he was in. It was a diesel estate car of some sort. I don't even remember what it was. But it turns out he's a taxi driver, and he spends all day bimbling around, getting stuck in traffic, doing 30 mile an hour, and he gets frustrated. And he takes the car to the track so that he can just floor it.
What, the taxi?
The taxi.
That's brilliant.
I love that.
Right? And gets it out of his system and actually just runs the car out, obviously not to its maximum, but, just drives it hard. And I think, well, like you said, people can go to places in this country to a track. People might be a bit daunted by a track day if they've never done one before. It might be a little bit scary, might be a little bit out of their comfort zone. But I would definitely say that if you've got something, even if it's, I'm not saying just an M3, but any sort of sports car, especially if you've got a supercar, if you've got a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, or anything like that, and you've only ever driven it in this country, it is wasted here. Take it to Germany. Just take 3 or 4 days out of your life, drive it to Germany, and take it on the Autobahn. You can cruise at 140, legally, and then when the road opens up in front of you, you can just plant your foot down and you'll find out where all your hard work and money went at that exact moment.
It is actually it is a special thing to be able to do that. It is
very, very special. I recommend it to anyone, and even if you've got no interest in speed or no interest in breaking laws, then definitely get over.
Have you boys ever been around the ring?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
When I was at the Nurburgring, it was the first time I went around it, and I chose to get an instructor and in fact, we rented a race prepped car and an instructor because I thought, you know what, I'm going to get more out of this experience if that instructor can push me further than I would be willing to push myself, not knowing the track very well. And I think that's something that if people are doing a track day, even in the UK for the first time, they should consider getting an instructor.
I did.
It's actually not that expensive. They'll come out, you can pay for them on a one track session basis, like go out for 5 laps, come in, then you can go out practice for a bit and then get them to come out with you a bit later. It's not as expensive as you'd think. But yes, you were asking, have we been on the Nurburgring? And I'm curious to know why.
You were talking about Germany, talking about top speeds, and I was just thinking like supercars, I assume, would like thrive there. Like that is where they'd be finding their limits because a lot of manufacturers, they like test them there, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I guess if you really wanted somewhere to actually try getting your car out and the best out of it, like within your capabilities, would the ring be a good place, or is it too scary, too intense?
That's like final boss.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like you should go to your local circuit. Like go to Bedford, go to Anglesey, go to Snetterton, Brands, whatever. Do a track day there through someone like MSV or Open Track or someone, and get experience that way. Nurburgring is technically still a public road, it's a toll road. And there is, everyone's seen the videos. If you're watching this, then you're interested in the Nurburgring. You must be. And it can go wrong.
Oh, the crash
like
videos
that.
there.
But it's not even people going mad. Like you see people go mad in 911 GT3 RSs, and you just think, oh, he made it. Wow, he made it around a whole lap. And then you see someone going around in, okay, it's not obviously track preps, but it'll be like a 330D or something. And they're just doing what you think is completely normal, but something will just unsettle the car. And then as they get on the brakes again, it kind of just, and then they're in the barrier. And it's just terrifying, which is why I said I had my reasons for not going to the Nurburgring. I planned a trip 10 or 12 years ago with 3 or 4 friends, but it just never worked out. People either didn't have the money or couldn't have the time or whatever. And I planned the whole thing out, through France, through Germany, etc. Staying here, there, and everywhere. And it's a great trip. Still do it. Go and do it if you want to do it. But be aware, because I wasn't aware at the time, and I was made aware many years later that if you have an accident on there, it's not just the fact that you're not insured, because no insurance company is sane enough to insure your car on there. It's the fact that if they have to come out and help you, it's 4 figures. If they have to clean up your oil, it's money. If you hit a bit of Armco barrier and they think, oh, that's too damaged and we have to replace it, they charge you by the meter. And it's like
5,000 euros, or is it something? It's something ridiculous.
You can go into 10 figures just by smashing.
Yeah, there are a lot of myths around this. This is something that Misha Shroudin's talked about a lot in terms of myth versus truth. Yes, you will get charged for it, but at the same time, it is not quite as bad as people make out. But it can get to that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think that you can't really go on a track day worrying about these things. And if you are, there is track day insurance that you can get. Yeah. It's just that the excess tends to be quite high. It tends to be around 10 to 15% of the value of the car. So if I took my Lamborghini out, I'd be looking at somewhere between, well, actually, I just saw one listed the other day, which isn't even an Edizione Tecnica, for 130 now, which is a fair bit more than I paid for my Edizione Tecnica. But let's say, for argument's sake, well, based on the Auto Trader price, 130, I'd be looking at least £13,000, if not £20,000 excess. So it isn't a small amount, but because on a track, if someone crashes into you, that's on you still.
Yeah.
Like financially speaking, you don't have any of this claiming off each other. On the Nurburgring, slightly different because it is a public road. However, most certainly British insurance companies have a get out clause saying you're not covered on the Nurburgring. So you'd have to get special insurance just for that, which is more expensive.
It's like how a lot of people have accidents very close to the Nurburgring, don't
Yeah,
they?
very odd.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Never on it, just somewhere
Never on it,
nearby.
just somewhere nearby.
An E36 being towed by another E36 just outside the perimeter of the track.
Yeah, so you can get these things. And the other thing that you can do is you can actually, pay a rental company to go on track. And I have a tendency to prefer that. And one of the reasons I tend to prefer paying for like a driving experience company or track company to provide a car is because generally speaking, they have mechanics checking over the car after the last time it was out, checking over the car before it goes out, doing a torque check there and then to make sure that, that car is set and it's good to go. It's generally been set up more for the track. So generally speaking, if I want to go out and enjoy a track day, I would much prefer to do it with a company that supplies the cars as well, personally. But I do like to take my own cars out. I mean, I took the R8 out on the track day last year. I had a great time doing that. But again, I made sure that I had it checked over before the track day. Luckily, the people that look after the car, the storage company, they actually run race cars as well. And I had all my tyres changed to brand new tyres, and obviously they torque checked everything and had a quick look over the car, make sure that nothing was of concern.
Well, this brings me on to going on track with your own car. If you've got a rental car, obviously you're going to push that maybe a little bit harder. Or if you've got like a $3,000 car like I had, that Fiesta, you're going to push it a little harder. Not so much to risk other people's, but so that you can actually enjoy it more. Now, if you had, for example, a £30,000 car, E46 Beamer, a Focus RS, you might be a little bit less wanting to push, because even if you go into the gravel trap, you can still really scuff up wheels and damage underneath the car and things like this. Magnify that to having a £400,000 Ferrari at your control with an insurance excess that costs more than your current car is worth. That's how I kind of felt when we were doing the passes in France and Switzerland. I thought to myself, I would probably make better progress down here in my Focus than I would do in this 800 horsepower Ferrari, because I know exactly how that car's going to react. I know exactly what it is and isn't capable of, how the power comes in and where to use it and where not to use it. Whereas in the Ferrari, it was just terrifying, especially when at some points we were literally 2 or 3 feet away from an unguarded 200-foot drop. And you're like, any mistake in this car that I'm not truly familiar with is like generational debt. It is terrifying. And I do think that you would make more progress on a track and on passes or what have you in cars that you're familiar with and that you are aware of what it's capable of, rather than getting into a 5, 6, 7, 800 brake horsepower rear-wheel drive car. That's a misconception about supercars. People are in the comments all the time. Oh, get your foot down. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd take that car through there at this mile an hour. And I would have had my foot down. No. When you see the footage from that trip, and hopefully it captures some of those drops, and anyone who's like, oh, yeah, James didn't have his foot down, or Ben didn't have his foot down, oh, what's he driving like that for? When you are aware of how much the car costs and how far the drop is, it's not in your own life you're thinking about at that point. It's obviously not only just the car, it's your life that you're thinking about. I do genuinely believe I would have made more progress in an MX-5 at that point, because if I put my foot down in an MX-5 in third gear on a hot day on the tarmac they had out there, probably not going to go wrong. And if it does, you're going to control it real quick. In that car, if it starts to go wrong,
you need a bank loan.
You need everything.
Mortgage.
You first need a helicopter to get it out of there.
Yeah.
It's going back to the whole misconceptions about and things that people think and don't think about supercars. Until you've been there and done it and you're driving on that road at that time, you don't want to unleash 830 horsepower in that tiny, narrow, winding. For people who aren't watching, I'm making winding, narrow road motions with my hands. But
it's the kind of motions you go, meow.
But yeah.
Another thing to mention actually on the insurance front, I should say, just because that was touched upon there again, is on track days in the UK where you go with an experience company and they supply the car, there's usually an excess, but then there's usually a fee that you can pay to basically waive the excess. Honestly, just pay it, because the less you're thinking about what could go wrong, actually, the more you can just get on with driving and you'll drive better. However, at the Nurburgring, generally speaking, the excess on the car is around half the value of it.
Oh, no.
And if you pay extra, the waiver reduces it to about a quarter or a third of the value of the car. So we stuck with the Mini Cooper S's. They've been fully track prepped, stripped out, caged, uprated brakes, suspension, all that, yada, yada, yada. And the excess on those was £12,000.
Oh no.
And then you pay a waiver fee. I can't remember how much it was, €50 or something like that. And it reduces the excess down to 6,000. Now, of course, many of these companies have GT3 RSs, Ferraris. That same company that we went with, they have an F8 that you can take out. So I'm sure you can imagine. I think the excess on the F8 is something like 50 grand or something.
How would they make you pay for that if it did go wrong? Like,
You've signed a document.
You're
You've signed a
legally
contract.
obliged to give them the money. That's it.
They will come after you.
but what if you don't have it? You have like no.
Then they
assets,
take you to
nothing.
court for it, I imagine.
They take you to court and you'll be paying it off for the rest of your life.
That's what I mean. Doing these experiences, misconceptions about supercars also leads into the financial side of it as well, not just the whole driving side, the speed and everything else. It's the financial side of it, because steering away from the depressing side of things and the insurance, we can go towards the more funny. Back to the R8, the rear-wheel drive one that we both drove a few months back. I had that for the weekend. And all I tried to get as many bums in seats as possible. Let's go back to the more positive side of supercar ownership, or borrowing as it was in my case.
And sharing that with other people who've never been in one before.
That's what Jay has taught me. The first time I ever went to Jay's house, the first thing he did was, this is like nearly 2 years ago, was chuck me the keys to his F12 that was on the driveway, because I was like, now I've become numb to it. That's the other part of supercar things. If you're around them for long enough, that childlike, wow, wonder just disintegrates and you don't have it anymore. I go onto his driveway now. There could be three Ferraris and a Lamborghini and something else he's got on test. And I just walk through them. Before, I would have had my phone out. I would have been trying to peer through the windows and look through the engine covers. Now I'm numb to it. So just enjoy them from a distance and in small bits. Otherwise, it becomes very normal, which sucks.
But you make a good point there, and I think this is something like some people think, oh, you bought that supercar to show off. Like you were saying, even with the Mercedes, you go to a petrol station and you have to allow extra time for people to stop and ask you questions, or ask if they can take a photo with the car, or any one of those things. And I was in a petrol station recently. There was these like school kids came up and they said, oh, do you mind if I take a picture of your car? I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. Went inside, they were taking pictures, paid for my fuel, and the person in there said, oh, that must feel really good when you get to show off your car. I was like, do you know what? It's not showing off. I said, for me, I was that kid.
Yeah.
I was that school kid once who maybe once in a blue moon got to see one of these cars going down the road. And for one to even be stationary, for me to get a close-up look of it was just like the biggest thing in the world. So for me, I feel like I'm sharing back with the enthusiasts and the future, and helping to create future enthusiasts by sharing that car with other people in exactly the way you described it.
That's where
it's a public service, isn't it?
Yeah, and it
that's where I
feels
was
good
going
because
with
of that. It feels good because you get to share that with someone who gets to appreciate it in a way that maybe, Ben, the supercar valeter over here, just whatever.
Oh, they're so normal to me now.
I'm really not trying to be blasé. I'm really not, but it's overwhelming, because I went from, as I said, hot hatches. You'd be impressed if someone turned up with a 350 brake Focus RS, and that was pretty much about it. And now it's like, it's daily, but it's still cool when you get to see something new. But the point I was getting to with the R8 is that I borrowed it for the weekend, and all I did was put people's bums in the passenger seat. I took it to my parents, obviously. I took my brother out in it. I went to a friend's house, and his son is 16 and he's car mad. And obviously taking him out in the sort of the ultimate version of an R8, where they put the most power but the least wheel drive in it, which will forever confuse me. But it's also just, it's not about showing off. It's not about being, Billy Big Balls leaning out the window, look at me, big I am. It's just being able to just see the joy in people's faces, because they love that car. They've played it in video games. They've seen it on TV. They've seen it on YouTube. They saw it at a distance at a car show behind a red rope, and now they get to walk within a foot of it. And it's like saying to someone, hey, do you want, it's not my car. I'm not playing, the big man with it. I'm just saying, hey, do you want to sit in it? And their face just is like, oh my God, just like my son, when that guy said, do you want to sit in this S2 Quattro from 40 years ago that he's only ever played on Dirt 4. And the look on his face, he was just in another planet, on his own in this car. There was no one else there. It was just him in the car. And that's what I did. But the financial cost of that kindness was the fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that.
Oh my God. I was literally brought to tears because all I did was drive about 80 miles in it and I'd done half a tank of fuel.
Right.
And it's just...
The F12 in a week of just doing some filming went under my kind of like usage, £75 worth of petrol.
Yeah. Oh, in a week?
In a week.
Oh, you got off lightly. I did £200 in a weekend.
Oh, crikey.
I did £200 in a weekend. I have to get it away from here, and I live an hour and a half away, and I'd done 3/4 of a tank by the time I got home.
Crikey. I did a nice one, which was quite fun. Was taking somebody, a young chap called Elijah, to his prom, which was quite fun.
Cool.
And I got that on video as well, which I've done just for the family, and I'm gonna send that to them. But that was an experience. But even that used nearly 2 bars of petrol, getting from the guy's house to the prom run, which is only about half an hour away and back, because of course you had to put your foot down a bit. You got to give them the experience. And then when you're pulling up, this is also something great about supercar things, is when I pulled up outside this place where it was happening, everybody was shouting, "Rev it, rev it, rev it!"
The prom, yeah.
And of course you've got to slide it neutral. You've got to give it a couple of blips as well, and yeah, so there is that. It's very fun, but it does use a lot of fuel.
I took my niece out in James's 430 Scuderia a couple of weeks ago. She'd never been in a Ferrari before in her life. And she came away from it just saying, like, wow, what an experience, And that for me makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
There's one last thing I want to mention, and then I think we'll wrap up. And that is one of the things that people don't understand about supercars is the supercar bills.
Oh,
Yeah, that's where I was going to go after the petrol bill, but you know more, so please.
Yeah. So the thing is, you can go out and you can buy yourself a Ferrari 360 Modena, right, for 60 grand. And you're like, well, that's pretty awesome car, 60 grand car. What other cars are 60 grand out of the box these days? Kias are 60 grand these days.
Probably a mid-range 5 Series.
Mid-range 5 Series, BMW, whatever. You get a service for one of those for what, a major service for maybe 1,300 quid or something, right? And a minor service for, 800. So my next service on my Lamborghini is £2,500.
Yeah.
Can I just say, their workshop rate is £250 an hour.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. But that isn't actually shocking to me. That isn't shocking because my local, I say local because there isn't anymore, but a Ford dealership, I needed them to do something. And I said, oh my God, how is it that much? And they went, oh, because it's like £160 an hour labour. So if a Ford dealership that's supposed to be, family cars, normal regular people stuff.
They're all taking a mick.
Like 160 quid an hour labour is just, how?
So and this is the thing. I mean, this is one of the reasons why, because I've got 2 older supercars, one of them maybe not for much longer. I've got a viewing on Friday.
Ooh.
Yeah, but they come with supercar bills. And even something like an Audi R8, you can get a V8 for 30, 35 grand these days. I think I've seen some for 25. And, Ricky from RE Performance has told me, like, there's been so many times where he's met someone who's properly, like, absolutely stretched themselves to get the finance on a V8 R8 for about 35,000. It's a reasonably good one, but then very soon after they discover, this needs fixing, and that needs fixing. 3 things, that's 10 grand. And they're like, what? I don't have that kind of money. When I got mine, in my first year of owning the car, the springs on the rear cracked. The engine latch mechanism allegedly failed while at the dealership, having had no other problems previously. I can talk to you about engine latches and fuel flap latches mysteriously failing for the first time when they're at a dealership. And most importantly, the aircon pump compressor. So aircon compressor for an Audi R8 at the time, 4 years ago, was £1,500.
That's just parts only.
Guess how much it was to install all in parts and labour?
£5,000.
Yep,
Yeah, that's
What?
£5,000.
Oh my God, I was going to go stupid and say £3,500, but
Yeah.
Yep. So basically, 3 little bits went wrong, and by the time we were done, the retail price on that bill was 10 grand.
So we had one of these things where James told my wife about how much one of the services costs on a Ferrari, because she wasn't entirely sure like how much they should be. And then we talked about it. We'd been out for dinner one night and came back, and all I heard was Gabby shouting, 12 grand. And I was like, yep, that was 12 grand.
yeah.
And so he said, and when you say your husband spent £5,000 doing up a Golf, you got off lightly.
Well, at least it's got like a completely new front end. It's got new wheels, new suspension. It's got a whole load of stuff going on. I mean, for what you've done to that car, and not a new engine, but it's been basically
Refreshed.
very much refreshed.
Yeah, I basically got my entire car overhauled for your air conditioning, compressor cost.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a good place to leave it today, don't you?
I think so, on that bombshell. So for those of you who are at home watching and listening, if we've changed your mind about supercars in any way today, let us know how in the comments. Now, maybe you still think supercar owners are full of it and up their own backsides, and that's totally okay. But if you thought that before and then you realize, actually, no, maybe I thought about this differently, or maybe the idea I had of a supercar as being just another car has changed. Because for me, and I think for all of us here, it's not just another car, it's called a supercar for a reason. So anything that's changed for you, let us know in the comments. And of course, make sure that if you do have any ideas or suggestions for topics, you can leave those below, or you can send us an email at landlord@theradiatorarms.com. We'll leave a link to all of that in the description. And most of all, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us again, Ben.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you. And Will,
It's been a pleasure as always.
we'll see you next time on the Radiator Arms.
Bye-bye.